Over 100 applicants. Yeah, it's tough. And after long months of silence, no replying, I wasn't even invited to any interviews. I went all in with habits I'll share in this video, and it all started coming together. I started being invited to interviews, and eventually even started getting offers, one of which was Google. I'm generally very happy and fulfilled, so in this video you'll start to realize that most of your competition barely even exists and how to exactly beat all of them. So how do you go about beating the first 70%? Honestly, those people aren't even competing. Those are the guys who watched a reel about salaries in IT and went to college to study CS because I want to be rich. They do projects, but only the school ones. They've heard something about lead code and the fact that they should do it, but thought, I start when I get invited to an interview. They still believe the old meta. Go to university, study hard, and eventually land a good job. And it's hard to blame them, but beating them can be summarized in one sentence. You either play the game or you automatically lose. So let's win. First thing you want to focus on is getting good at programming. Yes, it is that simple. To get a job as a software engineer, you must be good at coding. And there are many ways to practice, but I'll show you the only ones I used. So the first actionable step I want you to take is to create an account on LeetCode. LeetCode is this interview prep website with sets of questions commonly asked during interviews. And click on top interview 150. And this is basically the blueprint for all kinds of questions you might encounter during an interview. And for the next 3 days, I want you to understand as much as you can about the data structures used there. Before even solving a question, try to implement the data structures you believe you would use on your own. For example, a dictionary. Don't just know it's all of one. Understand that it's not always the case. Understand what happens and how the hash table grows, how collisions are handled, when things degrade to all of one, how buckets and rehashing works, and only then you will be able to explain to the interviewer that it's all of one on average and why. And I don't believe you'll need to study any more data structures than there are on these lists. So now just solve all of them, all 150, and use Python for God's sake. There is no reason to use anything else for lead code. Now you have to make yourself a decent resume. If it looks anything like this, delete this very instant. Now just go get a MIT or Harvard resume template, fill it with your credentials and projects. And for projects, to beat 70% of people, you don't even need any interesting projects. Just ask yourself, did I, or could I, finish this project relying solely on ChatGPT? If yes, then you might need to rethink your career path. You won't need anything too impressive, you can just do a crude up with, as I like to call it, a cherry on top. For example, a banking system with fraud detection. Something that just sounds good. When you hear this, you might think neural networks or something else complicated. It can be done with queries like this. And now you can add designed a banking system with fraud detection. Now you should have at least 3 projects and always put only 3 projects on your resume, and in the meantime apply everywhere. Go to LinkedIn, Glassdoor and send your resume every time something new shows up. Even with batch projects, you can just update them when we are done. Maybe wait for best companies, but I didn't do it. Maybe the recruiter will have a stroke and you'll land an interview. How do you go about beating the 90%? So now you've beaten the 70%. You're basically the golden pandemic era best candidate. But you've beaten the 70%, so congrats. But it's 2025 and unfortunately the bar is much higher. Now your projects need to go a step forward. They need to look something like something that people could and actually would use. Not just a school assignment with GitHub README. Yeah, to try it you need to install Postgres, install this, set up this, and you're good to go. If there are over 100 applicants, nobody even thinks about setting it up. So if it's a website, just host it, buy a domain for like $10 and slap it on your resume. And if it's a mobile app, what I did was creating account on Google Play. I believe it's Google Play Console. and just create a page there. Maybe you'll get some users, and of course nobody from the recruiting team will download it, but you are showing initiative and finish, and you might get some numbers which I will speak on later on. Now, every project you put on your resume should have a verbose page on the portfolio, some screenshots, demo video, a short write-up, maybe even a live link. I like creating those interactive demos of core mechanics. For example, this is one for a project I made in high school. If you ask what to build, it's pretty much the same thing as for 70%. Just build something you think is cool and impressive. And if you struggle with coming up with ideas and starting new projects, the best case scenario is to just go about your life and eventually will find a problem you would like to solve with an app. But if that was the case, you would be working on project and not watching this video. So assuming you are in a position where you don't have any impressive projects, just think about something you like, a hobby, anything, gym, finance, crypto. For example, I like playing chess, TFT, and making those videos on YouTube. What are the first apps that come to your mind when thinking about them? For me, personally, for chess, it would be chess engines. For TFT, those meta websites. And for YouTube, let's go with Social Blade. So you just start doing one of them. Just try to maybe even replicate it, but not one by one, but core mechanics. And if you are really passionate about those stuff, you will sooner or later find a twist you would like to add to it. I'll share some quick ideas I came up now. So TFT, Teamfight Tactics, is this game where you place characters, build an economy, and fight against other players. And often there are some best builds, the meta. Maybe I would analyze the player's game history on TFT, of course, and compare it with current meta and give the player the builds that fit their playstyle the most, something that he would enjoy playing. For YouTube, it will be quite basic, but maybe I'll use an AI to figure out what kind of videos should the creator make next based on the current trend and his niche. And if you are still stuck, just start anyway. Just do something as simple and something you think will fit the project. Just do anything. In art, there is this thing called an art block. Basically, you just can't think of ideas you want to draw. And the best thing you can do to break out of it is to just draw anything. Same here. So for YouTube projects, just connect to YouTube API. Maybe create a little search engine for channels. And as you beat this first point of resistance, you will sooner or later think of anything extra. In the opposing end, if you have a lot of ideas, that's a cool problem to have. What I like to do is to list problems that would come up with making such projects. For example, my chess engine might just be dumb. Maybe with TFT, I'll struggle to fetch players' game history. Now, pick the project that has a challenge that you are actually excited to overcome, not simply the one that you know how to solve. And another thing is when the project runs, most people stop. You want to make yours look like it belongs in a production. Try to build it like an enterprise. And of course it will be unnecessary. Of course it will be an overkill, but you might just say, yeah, I know it's an overkill, but I wanted to practice. So at Docker, maybe even Kubernetes, some CI, CD, caching, stuff like this, but don't fuck yourself with AWS builds. For those things you can run locally. Just let the recruiters know that you didn't just do your homework but build something. And in the meantime, of course, solve fleet codes. Eventually you should be at a level where you can do most mediums with ease. The 100%. How to be the best applicant. The big leagues. There was 1%. I don't believe I'm quite there yet, but I can share what I'm doing, and honestly, I would like your input on that. So the first thing I debated whether to put here or in the 90% is leading and winning a hackathon. It gives you two major advantages. First, it's a solid proof of being able to build something great. You cannot just win by following a tutorial, right? And it's a proof of endurance and skill. And the second thing is you being the leader. It's a free story for those interviews, behavioral ones. And it's no longer, I made a PowerPoint presentation with two guys for uni. And someone didn't want to do presentation and I told him, go do a presentation. Yeah, it's stupid. It's I've led 3 guys and crushed competition. Another thing which is meta, the most effective tactics available, is a personal brand. Maybe not only for a career but for life really. For me, it's a higher resistance than anything else because it's something entirely different from what I'm used to do. But ROI is huge. You can do whatever you want, record devlogs, something as I do now, maybe post on Instagram, whatever you feel works for you. And I believe the thing that gave me the edge was I have on my resume under one of projects I've produced a devlog with over 50k views. And I believe it's the best side hustle there is now. The last thing that makes the recruiter afraid to even let someone else hire you is starting a SaaS, software as a service, and making money with it. Suddenly, if your resume says managed to monetize X for Y users, you are set. That's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. Check the links in the description, like, subscribe, see ya.